Perfect. So originally I was slated to talk about, doing your CAE packages from a perspective as a reviewer, but with the changes, upcoming changes of the CAE criteria, they asked me to switch my talk to this. So this talk is similar to one I gave earlier this year about using free and open source labs to support cybersecurity education. So if you saw that one, I've got some updates in here. And after I go through the slides, I'm going to hop over to my browser. I'm going to demo a couple of the labs and show you some of the neat features of some of these free and open source labs. So feel free to post any questions that you have in the chat window. I've got that kind of called up on my screen here, and I'll try to address those as we go along. And feel free, as we kind of go, if you know of some that I don't cover, feel free to share some of those open source labs and lab environments that you might use at your different schools. And I made a couple changes, Jillian, to my slides, so I'll send you the updated edition here once we're done today too. So talk a little bit about our purpose, about our journey to outsource labs, some of the challenges of using outsourced labs, and then a lab demo. I probably won't have time to get the KU mapping since I'm going to do more of a demo this time, but I did keep the slides in there as a reference, and I talk about kind of our efforts to map the labs to the different knowledge units. So, hands-on labs, they're a critical part of learning cybersecurity, and they're also a CAE requirement. There's a variety of different ways to deliver lab content. So you can develop and deploy labs on your own infrastructure. You can outsource that infrastructure. You can utilize labs from external providers. There are a ton of lab providers out there. I've really seen a growth. I've been in academia now about 8 years now, and I've really seen a huge growth in the number of available external lab providers. There's free grant resource labs out there, and I'll talk about a couple of those. And then finally, free and open source labs that are out there. And this is actually a growing area too, where there's a lot of good free labs out there, and I'll highlight some today. And when I say free, I kind of count some of the low cost ones in there. So if it's under like $10 a month or something, I kind of consider that almost in the free category. So, some of the challenges, a lot of the externally provided labs, they're not mapped to the KUs or the NICE framework. So, this can make it a little bit challenging to find the right labs for your program, and, requires extensive effort to map to those. It's kind of a side note, I gave a presentation at the last CAE community meeting talking about maybe building some collaboration to kind of jointly map these to kind of save us all some effort. And also when you use external labs, in some cases you can't really customize them. In case of open source ones you can, but others there are some limitations to what you can do. So just a quick note about our journey to different lab environments. So we started a program in 2011, and we created a virtual lab environment, VMware based. We had an outside contractor running it. It was on surplus hardware. And then we migrated it. Our IT department took it over. We kind of rebranded it to Information Security Lab Environment, or ISLE. But there were some challenges with running an internal lab. So help desk, right? So if you're running your own lab, you've got to run a help desk. I don't know about other schools, but our students typically work on weekends. So they're doing their work on weekends and evenings. So it can be challenging to run, to manage a help desk. And in an academic environment, you really got academic and technical issues, right? And so the student may think it's a technical issue, but really they're just doing the challenge wrong or the lab wrong. admin access to systems. So this can be a bit of a challenge. In many cases, an organization may not want faculty to have admin style access to systems. So kind of hashing that out between your organizations or within your organization to allow faculty to do what they need to do while maintaining a good environment. It takes a lot of effort to develop lab content and deploy that, including writing job aids, building scenarios, getting data, and things like that. And finally, the cost, right? So it can be very costly to run an environment. Now, for larger universities, that may not be as big as an issue because you can scale out. But we found this as as a challenge, and as with the growth of some of these external providers and open source environments, we kind of found it was a lower cost option to outsource it. So it's actually pretty challenging to find outsourced labs. So there's a couple different ways that we did that. So kind of the biggest one was word of mouth, going to these different conferences, meeting the other faculty members and, people in industry and finding out what's good out there, going on things like Reddit, Slack channels and things like that to find out where some good labs were. Textbook vendors, several textbook vendors provide lab environments, and then vendor booths at different conferences, and then finally just doing our own research, Google, and finding out what's available out there. So picking the right labs. So most of the vendors don't map to KUs and KSA. So although I've seen that changing a little bit, I think some vendors are actually starting to do that now. Selection criteria that we kind of use was, first of all, the quality of the lab. We did look at ease of access, integration into our learning management system. That typically goes with a pay for lab service, not necessarily the open source ones and free ones. Cost, and then the security of the labs, right? Making sure we protect student information and things like that. There's really, we broke down the lab types into directive versus non-directive. So a directive lab is where, that goes through and says, click start button, open MMC console, click this button, do this, very directed, and kind of walk the students through the step. And then non-directive labs where something like the NICE challenge, where you're given a scenario, implement this group policy, create a security group, things like that, where the students have to go out and find for themselves or pull maybe from the curriculum or lectures and things like that. And then scenario versus non-scenario based. So, scenario based labs where you're given a situation that you're trying to solve, a forensic situation or something like that, versus non-scenario. It's just kind of the straight stick technical lab, follow the checklist, do these different things. Any questions on what I've covered so far? Is kind of a little bit of our background. Okay, I'll press ahead. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the providers we use. Please note this is this is not an official endorsement from National University. I'm going to highlight some of the paid ones that we use and some of the free ones, and I'll demo some of the free ones that we that we use, and I'll talk about some of the challenges and some of the benefits of those. So on the left side, I've got the ones we're currently using, and if you saw my talk earlier this year, this has changed a little bit. We've added a couple more on the current side, and we've added some new ones on the researching side. So and these aren't in any particular order. It's just kind of as I wrote them down, and I'll talk some more about each one of these. But Circade and Sarah Paid Lab Provider, they do kind of scenario-based labs. Students do tasks, they do a checkoff list. Immersive labs are a free one, and I'm going to do a demo of the immersive labs. InfoSec Learning, they're a paid environment. They offer kind of the step-by-step labs, but they also integrate challenges into their labs, and they do integrate with LMS. IT Pro TV, they do videos and they offer lab environments, and their labs in their environment are basically the directive labs, follow this step, follow that step. And then a new one, I talked our leadership into paying for our students, several of our classes to participate in the National Cyber League from the fall season. So we've got, I'd say, about almost 100 students participating in the National Cyber League, and we've actually integrated this into our classes, both the preseason and the season, regular season round. Our classes are a little different. Our classes are 1 month at a time. So they take one class a month. So we're kind of splitting it over 2 classes. And for our assignments with National Cyber League, we're not actually grading the students on how well they do. They're going to do a write-up of what they did, and the value of it, or if, their perceived value of it, or if they didn't like it. We didn't feel that it would be fair to kind of toss this at them and grade them on their score, because it is a wide variety of topics. I believe some other schools are also using this National Cyber League in their program. The NICE Challenge, so that's a great project. We've been using this for a couple of years now. I'm teaching a Windows security class this month, so I'm hogging a bunch of their resources. I'm sorry if maybe I took some folks, but it's a great scenario-based environment. One thing with the NICE Challenge, the challenge is a great word, because a lot of some of the tasks are pretty challenging to use, but they do two events a month. They have 2 webinars a month where you can participate, they answer questions, and they'll do deep dives into different challenges too. Over the Wire, I'm going to do a little more. That's another free one. I've got a demo of that. Pico CTF, I've got a demo of that coming up. Hack the Box, also, and that's a freemium model. You can do free or paid, and it's pretty low, inexpensive. And kind of ones we're still kind of researching, talking to vendors about. Linux Academy, they do videos and labs. They have a lot of good cloud-based labs that they offer. And then attackanddefense.com, and this is from the folks that run SecurityTube, and they've got some nice Windows environments. We're still kind of testing those out internally. And then a new one, there's actually some really good environments, open source cloud environments that basically you can deploy on your own with DevOps tools. You got to pay for the AWS or the Azure services. And I don't have an actual demo of that one, but I'm going to highlight some of the projects that we've tried. I did a proof of concept in a class I taught back in August. And you kind of run into some of the same problems with KUs and mapping objectives to these labs, but there's a lot of good data, and most of these are created by people that are working in the industry, so they are relevant. Some of the challenges of outsourced labs. So, downtime. So in some ways you're at the mercy of the vendor for downtimes, or if it's an open source project, same type of thing. Support. So obviously the paid vendors are going to provide a little bit better support. Open source, not as much. Updates. You're a little bit at the mercy of the vendor for how often they update their material. We do get some feedback, like some of the labs we use still use Microsoft Baseline Security Analyzer. We're trying to find some newer ones for that, but keeping up with the most up-to-date software. Cost. You do have to pay for the outsourced vendors. From our perspective, I think overall the cost of outsourcing is much lower than providing than using your own, creating and managing your own lab environment. I don't have exact figures on that, but that's kind of I've kind of done my own. We've done an internal comparison before and after. One of the biggest challenges. So I had a big list of vendors there. No single vendor provides everything you need. So we do get some feedback. Sometimes students don't like hopping back and forth between labs. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because, if you work for any large organization, you're going to have a lot of different apps and applications and systems that you've got to hop between. So it is a bit of a drawback from convenience sake, but it is kind of realistic. I know, I know, I know when I go to our single sign-on, I've got a ton of apps that I can choose from. Publicly available answers. So especially for the open source ones, there are publicly available answers to many of these. So, cheating can be an issue for students. We'll typically have students do some type of screenshot to prove they actually did it, and do some type of write-up demonstrating, that they attained the knowledge, from that lab. Course coverage of lab content. So, finding the labs that meet the specific objectives in your course or outcomes in your course can be a bit of a challenge too. And then faculty preparation. So just making sure faculty have early access to prepare for the labs, and that they fully understand them. We've started a new thing. We've got some federal work study students, and we're having them provide lab assistance too. And that seems to be working out pretty well. Any questions so far? Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick highlight of some of the free ones that I talked about, and then I'm going to hop into demo mode. It's kind of hard to switch back and forth, so I'm just going to do the highlights first, and then I'll hop over to my browser and we'll demo these, and we'll see what they look like. So immersive labs, it's actually based out of UK. It's several big industry players are involved in this. They've got a large variety of topics, which is really really good. And they kind of go from novice, and they call it ninja, right? So you got beginner to expert level. And their labs, there's both a combination of kind of knowledge and hands-on. So some of their labs are just Q&A based, but other labs where you're going into the system, and the students have to do things. And it's really nice. They have rankings, and I'll show you that they rank both people in your organization and school rankings too. So that's kind of neat. And this one's free for .edu. So over the wire, this is a command line based challenges. It's nice because if students are afraid of the terminal, it's a good way to get them involved using the terminal in SSH. It's hands-on. You solve. You typically have to get some type of flag, and that you get, or password for the next level, and you move up to the next level. My favorite one on here probably is Bandit, and that's basic Linux, but they've got some programming ones, web security ones, and things like that. And I would say they kind of run beginner to expert as kind of their levels. So Hack the Box, this is a EU-based one, and basically what's nice about this, I mean, this is essentially a pen testing lab. They've got a variety of hosts out there, and you have to gain access to them. They have Linux and Windows, and I think they just added an Active Directory one. I saw a post about that yesterday, but I didn't have a chance to dive into it. It's nice that they have difficulty ratings too for the different boxes. They've got a ranking system, and they also have active and retired machines. And what's nice is people can do write-ups on retired machines, but they've been able to kind of keep the write-ups limited on active machines. You probably have to really dig around to find something on an active machine. They'll kick people off the system if they're doing write-ups on it. So what you can do is, for an assignment, you can have somebody doing a retired machine, right? Go out and maybe watch a video on it and then do it. And then the active one could be more maybe like an assessment or something like that. They also have challenges on their website, and they kind of run from beginner to expert. A lot of people use this site to prepare for OSCP too. I've seen some blog posts and things like that. Pico CTF, Technically, it's a high school competition, but this is really good for your lower level classes. It's great for students that are new to cybersecurity. Um, and some of the, even though it's a high school, some of the questions can be kind of challenging. This is from the team out at Carnegie Mellon. It's a Q&A style. And I would say this kind of runs beginner to intermediate. You could, some of the questions might kind of reach the expert level, but another good resource. And you can go back to different previous years competitions too that are pretty good. And then deploying in the cloud. So these three lab sets here, basically you use a tool called Terraform, and you download the scripts. You have to do a little bit of customization with your own key and things like that. And then you can deploy these labs in the cloud. They come with some nice data already built in. I'll hit the GitHub page for each of these. Some of the challenges for these. So if you're most of them are designed for straight deployment to AWS, although you can modify it for Azure. But it can be pretty pricey. I think I used about 750 hours of compute time in August when I did it. I had some lab credits, and AWS Educate, you can get lab credits there for a class. That's what I've been doing. But you kind of got to watch it, right? You got to watch your expense. I use a tool called cloudcraft.io. It kind of gives you the estimate of how much it's going to cost, and it'll do diagrams of your lab environment too. So that makes it pretty nice. And it's there's some pretty good videos out here. If gaming's become really popular. I don't know if you're familiar with Twitch TV, twitch.tv, but basically it's I would say a video site for gamers. It's people do live streaming when they're playing different games in there, but there's actually people that post cybersecurity examples up there of them doing CTFs and things like that. So it's not a bad resource. And then IPSec, he does the retired boxes from Hack the Box and some other demos. So his site's nice for demos, and his site is on YouTube. So he does nice walkthroughs for some of the challenges. So any questions so far? I'm going to switch to my browser, and we'll hop in and we'll do a live demo. And I'll paste in the links as I go along too, so you got them as we go. Give a sec here to share the right screen. And does everybody see the immersive labs? Hold on one sec, I lost my chat window. There we go. All right, let me paste the link in so you got it for this one. There's the link for this one. So when you log in, you can see they've got different areas here for the different labs. And let me just hop over to the leaderboard here. We don't have the students use their real names, but this is our kind of student ranking. But what I like is they've got a global, league table here. And this lists all the schools, right? So you can see here, National University, we're at 20th place overall. And let's see, the last one we're 20th out of 717. And let's see who's first place. So, it is an EU-based school, but see Dakota State's up there in the top 5. So if anybody from Dakota State's on, good job. So this is kind of nice too. You can see your rankings, and you can see the student rankings. And what I'll do for this one for assignments, I will have students take screenshots of their badges or when they first complete. And so you can see here, so you can see mine here. These are my different badges here that I've done. So you go to labs here, and let's just pick, we'll pick tools as an example. So you can see they've got a variety of different labs. So they got Wireshark, Snort, Burp Suite, Metasploit. And here's what's nice. Let me click on this one here. So they kind of give a short description of the lab. You can see the ones you've completed and the ones coming up. So let me show more here. So TCP, you know, they've got the different ones here. Oh, and since it's EU based, they map a lot of these to the CREST certifications too. So you go to the lab here. And so it gives you an intro to the lab. And if you click here, Start Lab, so on the top right, you'll see info. So this gives you info on the labs, and it gives you a little background information on the lab. And it'll typically have some links and things like that. And there's usually, you can kind of glean some hints from this part. And then what the students do is they've got questions here. Basically, you know, there's typically five questions, you know, 3 to 5 questions for each one. And so some are just like you have to answer the question, and others you've got to open up. So on the left screen here, you've actually got a virtual machine, and you have to call up the program. You know, for this one, I'm not going to do it here for due to time, but call up Wireshark, right, and open up the file and do the filtering and things like that. Then they paste the answer in here, and then when they're done, that'll either get a green check or no, they'll get incorrect. And then once they get all the answers correct, they'll you know, get the badge for the problem. So it's really nice, great way to track. The virtual machines spin up really really quick, and you can see your instances here. So, and you can restart it if you need it. So this is really a nice nice set of labs that are free. Any questions on immersive labs? Okay, so next, over the wire, and let me paste the link in for this one too. So like I mentioned, there are a variety of different labs here. Bandit is a good one to start out with. And basically, this is you know, this is Linux, basic Linux commands. And so the way these work is you basically SSH into their box. So here, so level 0. So basically, you need to SSH in. They give you a username and a password, and then basically to get to the next level, you've got to get the password from the previous level. So here, basically, the password for the next level is stored in a file called README. So basically, you just got to open the file for this one, and then you get that, and you kind of move your way up. So Bandit, you know, Bandit 0, Bandit 1, Bandit 2, Bandit 3, so on and so forth. And they'll give you maybe some examples of commands you need to solve. So this is really good at, you know, getting students in either PuTTY, a Linux terminal window, or, you know, even on Windows 10 now you can do Linux terminal. So great way to for like an intro level Linux class. Any questions on over the wire? All right. So next is Hack the Box, and I've already logged in. So with Hack the Box, they've got a free model and they've got a pay model. The pay model is pretty inexpensive. I think it's like 10 Yeah, so immersive labs and over the wire are free. Hack the Box has free and paid version. The paid version is pretty inexpensive, maybe 10, I don't know if it's pounds or euros a month or for a couple months. And they have a university program too. We haven't signed up for it, but there are several universities that are listed on their university site for Hack the Box. Let me see. Yeah. So if you let me click the universities here. So yeah, you can see several universities are signed up for it. A lot of EU and Asian based, but there's several U.S. universities on here too. And so the way they work here is they've got host over here. If you do the pay, you get access to the retired machines. But what's nice is so they've got active and retired. So I'll go to the active ones first. And so what's nice, they've got the name, they've got a little window, Linux or Windows. You can, let me see here. And so you can kind of see the difficulty ratings on this if you click on the machine, the difficulty level that people rate it. You can actually reset these if they freeze up or something like that. And basically the way it works is once you have an account, they send you a VPN file, and you whatever host you're using to access it, you VPN in, and then you try to gain access to that box. And they got ratings, how many people have owned it, and things like that. So it's a nice, pretty nice system. And like I said, some of these are pretty challenging. And then they've got challenges too that you can do. These are more kind of the Jeopardy style CTF ones that are available. And let's see. And then they have some additional they have like an Active Directory environment too, but that's an upsell, or you have to pay additional information. And they're very responsive. I've emailed them about different things too, so they're pretty responsive. Yeah, good question. So I don't think Over the Wire does badges, but you can tell levels by you can either have them sending like the password or a screenshot of them logged into that highest level that they got to. That's what I'll typically do, is have them send like the highest level that they got to, a screenshot of showing them on that machine. And I'll typically, like for intro, I just have them go up to like level 9 or 10. But good question. They don't have specific badges. Next is Pico CTF. So they have kind of a competition period, and then it's also available year round. Like I said, this is designed for high school students, but it is a nice, general, entry level cybersecurity ones. And here's, and they actually have a shell terminal you can use too if you need it. But you can see the different categories and questions here, and you solve it, and then you paste it in, and you get credit for it if you get it. So this is a good way for people new to the field to get started. So next, I'm going to talk. Oh, let me paste in the link for the Pico CTF ones there. And I didn't paste Hack the Box either. Hold on. So next are some of these labs that are available on GitHub. So so this one, I've kind of deployed this once or twice, but I haven't done a full up test of it in class. But basically, this has a bunch of pre-built hosts, and it's got the Microsoft Advanced Threat Analytics on it. And let me paste a link here. Oops. Here's an article on it. And let me see, they've got a diagram here. So basically, this is kind of a DFIR related lab. They've got a Splunk on it. It preloads log data into it, so you can, you know, if you're doing a log assignment, I think it'll be pretty good for that. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, pasted the wrong link in, so. I want to say, I almost, I don't want to say, because I clone these labs because I've been messing around with them. So, so this seems like a pretty good one if you're doing DFIR stuff, but this does take a fair amount of work, and it does have some pretty beefy virtual machines on it. So, you know, it could be a bit, it can be expensive. And actually, you can run this in VMware too. I forgot. You know, if you've got a beefy enough environment, some of these are designed to run in VMware too. I don't have that type of environment, so I've been doing it in AWS. And hold on 1 second. And I've actually used this one in class as I did it as kind of a blue versus red team challenge. So this one is basically you can do stuff with the attack framework. It's got some good data sets in it. And let me see if and this is kind of threat hunting focused. I think they've got a nice lab environment here. Yeah. So I use the Shire environment. So you can see here, you've got some workstations. You've got an elk stack on it. And you can see here, these are the different different clients that you've got on it. So this one's a good one too. Like I said, I've only used it once, and this takes a little bit of work. And this one can be a bit pricey too. So you look at these boxes that are on Windows to deploy, and you've got to pre-register with this one because they use Windows 10 on AWS. So you've got to they got to give you access, I think, to the to their they got to share out their AMI. But you can see here, this is a pretty robust environment, and just the time and effort spent to build this would be pretty pretty extensive. And then they've got some data sets that simulate APT groups. So some attack emulation. So let me see. I forget that they have the specific names. Yeah, they've got examples of lateral movement and persistence and stuff like this. So this is a pretty pretty interesting one too. And finally, the cyber range, and this was actually built from a NSF project, I think, out of Syracuse. And let me paste that one in there. This one is definitely pretty expansive of the virtual machines. So you can see here, this is what the cyber range looks like. And he's constantly updating this. But you can see he's got a bunch of Windows 10 machines, a bunch of servers. He's got honeypots, reverse engineering set up. And he's got some of the, he cloned some of the detection lab items too. So this is a pretty extensive one. I haven't deployed this yet or used this in class yet. And this one, you remote into the desktops. I'm looking at seeing if I can maybe find a better way to access it using the there's an Apache project that basically you can access virtual machines via web interface. And I'm drawing a blank on the name now. Darn it. Give me 1 second. Man, I'll think of it afterwards, but it's an Apache project that allows you to display virtual machines inside of a web window. So like I said, this one's pretty extensive, and this one, definitely takes some work to get built up, and this one's definitely probably the most expensive one if you're running it on AWS, and you've got to do a form for this one to get access to the AMIs. You have to share your AWS account number in order to do this one. And let's see. So those are the main ones. I didn't demo the NICE Challenge because they've got some great training material. Like I said, we use NICE Challenge in several classes, and that's another free one. You just have to schedule. So that wraps up all that I've got. Let me share out my slide here so you got my contact info. Like I said, I'm almost out of time, so I don't got time to cover the KU stuff, but I do have those in the slides. And feel free to email me if you have any questions, and I'm happy to take any questions now. And feel free to share any suggestions that maybe stuff your lab environments that you're using. And I did submit a talk for the CAE forum to demonstrate these cloud ones. So if that gets picked up, if that gets accepted, you're welcome to attend there. Yeah, I'll send the updated ones to Jillian as soon as we're done here, and they'll get those posted on the CAE community website for the slides.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Chris. I'm going to go ahead and post where you'll be able to find all of the resources from today's talk in the description box here, or in the chat box here. Here's where you'll be able to find not only the recording of today's presentation, but also all of the slides and the announcement that was posted for this talk. We have a couple minutes before we actually begin the next talk.